So here we are with Manufacturing 4.0, and we're going to have a wonderful conversation today and presentation. Here with us, we've got the co-founders of Makers Row, which is an online marketplace launched in November 2012 that basically inspires businesses to think domestic first. Okay, so we'll be looking at Manufacturing 4.0 from a different perspective here. The platform, which was created, connects American manufacturers and product-based businesses to making factory sourcing easy. So with us today, I have the pleasure and the honor of being the moderator for this wonderful panel that we have. We've got Matthew Burnett, who is the CEO of Makers Row, and Tanya Menendez, who's the company's Chief Marketing Officer. And they're going to basically give us an overview today of the making of Makers Row and what it really means to, the new wave of manufacturing. So I want to open it up and tell us a little bit more about yourself and get right into the presentation and conversation.
I went to school at Pratt in Brooklyn. I come from Detroit, Michigan, so manufacturing has always been in my blood. My grandfather migrated from the South to Detroit for the $5 workday at the Ford plant. So I've always had an affinity for manufacturing. Shortly after that, I went to, this is my grandfather right here in the background. Fantastic. So my grandfather, shortly after World War II, learned how to make watches. So he went to horology school. And he opened up his own shop in which he repaired watches in Detroit, Michigan. And so since I was born, I've grown up around watches and have loved seeing how things work and how things are put together. And so that's where my affinity for manufacturing came from. Shortly after graduating from Pratt, I started designing watches for Marc Jacobs, DKNY, a variety of other large name brands, but really saw that there was a ceiling there for creativity. And in order for me to truly become the type of designer that I wanted to be, I was going to have to start my own company. So in 2007, I started Steel Cake Watch Company. These are a few of my watches behind me. And I manufactured everything overseas because by default, as an entrepreneur, I felt like if you wanted to create something, you had to produce it overseas. So for about 3 years, I produced overseas, and I recognized that from my experience being with a larger company to now being off on my own, it was going to be a different path. There was no red carpet out there for me. So it was because of that my largest order was the next guy's smallest order. But you have to deal with that when you're dealing with manufacturers overseas. So with that, there comes a lot of language barriers, time zone differences, and just all in all, it takes about 3 months to produce the sample and 4 months to get the large order shipped on a boat. So that was just part of the struggle of producing overseas as a small business. So after 3 years of producing watches overseas, I really wanted to be able to have much more control over the manufacturing process. One incident occurred when I was producing watches overseas where I lost about $40,000 worth of goods because I approved the sample. And once it went into production, which I was in the United States while it went into production overseas, there was one critical error in which the band would pop out of the case of one of the watches. And this was in about 2,000 watches. So I lost quite a bit of capital in that. And I just recognized what a gamble it was to produce with someone that was so far away from me where I'm not able to keep track of the quality of production. So I started a new venture, this is Brooklyn Bakery. Aside from bracelets, we did wallets and a variety of other small leather goods. That company scaled about 10 times as fast, and it's largely due to how close I was to the manufacturers. So all the leather that I got was from Queens. All the hardware that I got was in the Bronx, and everything was assembled in Midtown Manhattan in the Garment District. So I was able to produce what it took me about 3 months overseas to produce within about 2 to 3 weeks domestically in New York. So it was wonderful just being so close to the manufacturers. Aside from just the fast turnaround time, I learned much more about how to create a world-class product. By creating such great relationships with these manufacturers. One of the main problems was that it was just so hard to find those manufacturers. So this is me and Tanya in Ice Stone Factory in the Navy Yard. We can go to the next slide. This is how you're finding manufacturers in the United States prior to Makers Row. Overseas, to find a manufacturer, you have Alibaba, Global Sources. There are so many other online resources that you can find overseas manufacturers, which make it much easier to find someone on the other side of the globe than even in your own country. With manufacturing domestically, we use the Yellow Pages, Google, all these other inefficient resources to find manufacturers because, of course, most of the manufacturers that I was reaching out to had no website. So you would have to go door to door, literally, in the garment district to find the right manufacturer for you. So it used to take about 2 months just to find the right manufacturer. It's great once you find them, but every time you want to be able to expand your collection, you had to go back to those inefficient resources to find those manufacturers. So after about 3 years of producing domestic, 2 years of producing the leather goods, I needed to find a partner to help me scale because when I say that company grew 10 times as fast, it did. So we started to get into department stores, a large number of big box retailers. And so I needed a counterpart to be able to help me with that, and that was Tanya's expertise. So Tanya actually suggested to me, after discovering what a difficult process it was to find these domestic manufacturers, that we create a resource for other small, medium-sized businesses to find these manufacturers as well. So while we were brainstorming on how this type of resource was going to interact with brands and manufacturers, we were ordering a pizza one late night. And online, when you're ordering a pizza with this particular pizza store, you would see that Greg is putting the toppings on your pizza, Mike is putting the pizza in the oven, and Fred is going to be delivering it in about a half hour. And that was really the light bulb moment for me where I recognized that this is about as easy as manufacturing could get, where about 75% of first-time entrepreneurs fail when they try to create their own product. It's largely because either they don't have the resources, and once you find the resources, if you don't have the expertise within your industry of knowing what makes a top-tier product, you're probably going to fail. And so we wanted to be able to create this 6-step process from basic concept all the way to production to be able to help entrepreneurs and small, medium-sized businesses to create products domestically. Because even if you've been producing products overseas, it's largely a black box of manufacturing. You don't really understand all the manufacturers that are involved within the supply chain because they're these pre-fixed manufacturers. But we wanted to be able to break the supply chain down because here, the landscape of manufacturing is much more fractured. So that's really what we set out to do when we started with this 6-step process to make manufacturing easier. And so when we launched in about 2012, November 2012, initially we launched with about 1,000 manufacturers and about 1,000 manufacturers and 0 brands. And today we're over 60,000 brands and 6,000 manufacturers. And this was largely because we were able to create a network in which people were able to reach out to one another, much like LinkedIn, where we created a professional network for American manufacturers in the United States. And for that, with that, I'll leave it up to Tanya.
I'm a 5th-generation Newarker. I have a big family. We're all close and we have a lot of history here.
My great-grandfather immigrated here from Italy in 1878, and from there we've grown through 4 generations here in Newark.
This is a place that is very diverse, both from its economy as well as its people. It is an energized place.
One of the most dynamic parts of the Newark scene these days is our manufacturing sector. Businesses that are strong and proud and doing incredible things, employing thousands and thousands of people. And the great thing about our manufacturing sector to me is that it's getting stronger and stronger.
There are over 300 manufacturing companies in the city of Newark. We manufacture everything here from hats to hot sauce.
I'm Mitch Kahn. I'm the owner and founder of Union Wear. We make baseball caps, visors, tote bags, garment bags, backpacks. We have grown steadily over the last 20 years and now have over 100 sewers and cutters here.
My name is Dean Serratelli. I'm the owner of Serratelli Hat Company here in Newark, New Jersey. Most of the customers are west and south, and even though we're on the East Coast, we're able to ship competitively priced hats at the highest quality level available today and the quickest.
The strategic advantage of being in Newark as a manufacturer begins with transportation.
Having our airport, rail lines, our ports, highways, all intersecting right here, this is actually the logical point to do manufacturing in the Northeast.
If you move a little further west of Newark into the New Jersey suburbs, it's really difficult to find skilled labor. If you move east, it's really difficult to find space. So that's why there are hundreds of manufacturers in the city of Newark. It just seems like everything's at our fingertips here.
Manufacturing jobs are strong jobs. They're jobs that help to empower thousands of my residents right now. And in fact, it's also creating wealth in this region that's extraordinary.
For every dollar of revenues, manufacturers are going to hire more people than any other sector. $1 million backpack order, we might hire 35, 40 people to do, and everyone that we've hired has been a Newark resident or someone who lives right outside of Newark.
Brick City Development Corporation is the City of Newark's economic development catalyst, and we spend a lot of time working with the manufacturing firms to hire residents.
All of our employees here are all from the local area, and they've seen us through many changes and stayed with us and grown with us.
Well-compensated and well-treated employees make the best kinds of employees. And to be able to offer very inexpensive but comprehensive health benefits enables us to attract the best talent in this area.
The job opportunities in manufacturing are vast. Everything from entry-level jobs, human resources, finance, law, all of these are disciplines that exist within manufacturing.
For over 150 years, they've been here as our partner, our employer, and we expect that for the next 150 years, they'll continue to be a viable, vibrant part of our community.
What I think we've got to start realizing is our manufacturing sector is beginning to charge forward. It's beginning to lead our city. It's just incredible to see the kind of things that are coming out of Newark, New Jersey. I'm proud to see what's made in Newark.
Once we had already launched Makers Row, and actually prior to Makers Row, neither Matthew nor I were from the tech industry, and so it was, we actually went through an accelerator to get Makers Row launched off. And then our first task was to get traction. And in order to get traction, we needed to build a community on both sides. Because it's a marketplace, the biggest thing that we needed to prove was that people would come to the site and be able to interact and successfully find manufacturers and create transactions. And so what we did first was focus on the supply side. So we knew that if we were able to get manufacturers to the site and get them engaged, brands would come. And so what we literally did was go and visit all of the factories that we work with and that Matthew had been researching for the last 5 years, and asked them if they would join our site. We printed out screenshots of what the site would look like. We went inside of the facilities, visited them personally, took high quality videos, images, and really created a human element to the site that made it a lot easier to understand that behind the products that you produce, there are people, there's hands, there's manufacturers that are willing and excited to work with new and emerging businesses. And so that was really successful. And what we started to do was actually start telling the success stories of our users. And so what we saw was that once we had manufacturers on the site and people were able to connect with them, what happened was that people from other backgrounds, from outside of tech or outside of the manufacturing space, now had access to manufacturers. And so people like Roberto, who had a full-time job, was now able to start his company. He created a Kickstarter campaign, successfully got funded, and is now in several department stores and boutiques. And similarly, people are also reshoring. So people that had difficulties producing overseas we're now able to find domestic manufacturers easily and then start to reshore their manufacturing and take their handbag production from overseas now and make it locally. And the video that you just saw, we went into the communities and created partnerships with the cities themselves and brought all of those manufacturers online, because before you literally had to look in the yellow pages, go door to door, ask around and ask like what friends knew a manufacturer that could produce something for you. And so instead what we did was we really helped all of these manufacturers get online and start to use the internet and the messaging platform. And what we wanted to focus on was to make sure that there weren't just small facilities. So we have some of the largest facilities within the United States on the site. We wanted to make sure that a brand could come to Makers Row and start, with a small pattern maker and with a one-man shop, all the way down to a multi-million-dollar facilities that are able to grow your business. And so here's a smaller handbag factory inside of Midtown Manhattan, which is literally like on 38th and 8th, and very accessible by trains. And before Makers Row, it was very, very difficult to even know that those facilities existed. And what we're really excited about is just the access for people to solve problems for their own communities. And so a few examples that we've seen that now that people have access to manufacturing is that skateboarders are now able to create a skateboarding line, or a ballerina is now creating a new type of leotard. And we see this all over the United States, where people now, they don't have to know somebody in order to get into the industry. Now they just have to be able to go onto Makers Row, or to even search on Google and find Makers Row and connect with the manufacturer directly. And so what's been really exciting is actually some of the success stories of now factories are now able to hire local residents and start building up their businesses. And this specific example is of a factory that started because of Makers Row. Before Makers Row, he was full-time doing marketing at a company, and then now, because of all of the orders coming in from Makers Row, he's able to become a full-time factory, and is now hiring people for his factory.
Hi, I'm Sean Bilovecki, owner of the Pattern Makers. I'm a preferred factory on Makers Row, and I've been making patterns for about 10 years now. When the downturn happened in 2008, 30% of our accounts went out of business in one season. I had a baby daughter, and I had to get a normal job. So I started working for one of the bigger print companies in Cleveland, and I was the VP of marketing. And then I saw Makers Row, and I was like, I'm gonna try to put a profile on there and see what happens. I really didn't know what to expect. I was just hoping for 1 or 2 emails a month, and I'm gonna make like 5 patterns a month. And now I'm doing like 10 patterns a day, ranging from like baby hats to toddler dresses to sports bras to denim, really fashion forward hoodies, like aggressive outerwear. It's like everything. And ever since then, the amount of work has allowed me to, leave that VP of marketing job and now make more money than I did there on my own with my own business. At Pattern Makers, we're really excited to work with startups. I'd say 80% of our clients are startups, and it's their first time. They have little or no experience in apparel. So having been in their shoes, I try to be the factory that I wish would have been there when I was, coming up, that I had access to. The future of apparel in the US, I think the consumers are changing, and they're wanting stories and integrity out of brands, and I think that the brands that can offer that are small ones. Makers Row has a lot to do with that, with the networking, because that's always the biggest challenge is I have an idea, how do I get it made? And Makers Row sort of connects the dots. The relationships and the brands that are growing on Makers Row are the brands of the future.
So for us, it's been really exciting going. Before Makers Row, I worked within operations at Goldman, and so it was always a dream for me to create a tech company. And but I actually quit Goldman to join Matthew full time at his leather accessories line. And so I actually never thought that I would be in the leather accessories business, and that would inspire us to create a tech company ultimately. So really excited to be here.
All right, so you've had a little introduction into Makers Road, and wanted to try to bring it back, at least bring it to a South Florida perspective. We talk about the need to diversify the economy here in South Florida, and not really known too much for manufacturing. Just wanted to know, in terms of with Makers Road, how can the technology and what you're doing enable like areas such as Florida and entrepreneurs to be able to plug in? How can it help our local economy?
Well, it already is. Roberto is actually from Miami, right? And so, and the factory in which he's creating his denim is also in Florida. It's a converted cigar factory that is now an apparel factory. So we've already seen it touching a lot of different areas. And the sad yet surprising thing has been that we don't really understand exactly the type of impact that we've had on all these different cases, right? Because initially we just started to just apply for small, medium-sized businesses. We felt like everybody else has what they need, right? These big guys have what they need. Some of the first companies to sign up, though, were suppliers and contractors from Walmart and Staples and Mark Echo himself. So that was one of the first big-time, big-name entrepreneurs that signed up for Makers Row. So we went to go see him. And when we met him, he basically let us know that most of these big companies don't have access to American manufacturers. It's something that's very, very new, that a lot of these companies are now starting to look for domestic manufacturers. And this is largely because of the prices, the price differential. I used to produce watches overseas and in 2007, and now the price of production has tripled overseas. So it's due to a lot of different factors. So I call this the perfect storm of what's happened from these local economies that need to be able to work, small business to small factory, right? But now we want to create much more of a national dialogue where even factories in Florida are able to get business from designers that might be in Ohio.
Great. So we mentioned that in terms of starting November 2012, and here we are, 2015. That's exponential growth in a very short period of time. What's the overall vision? I mean, what do you see? Where do you see Makers Row 5-10 years? I mean, I know we're talking about measuring impact, but where do you see Makers Row in just 5 years from now?
Right now, we have a long ways to go. Though we have about 6,000 manufacturers, there's over 1.2 million manufacturers in the United States within consumer products. And so that's where we see ourselves growing to. We have so many different verticals that we have to touch as well. We've been primarily focused on apparel and furniture. We wanted to be able to focus vertical by vertical because each vertical is so complex, right? So we wanted to apply this 6-step process to literally each industry that we approach, so that it was much more of a guide for anyone. Because even a lot of these large companies, for example, Microsoft, they're looking to produce duffel bags. So soft goods are not their primary focus. And so in most of these larger companies, it's not, and most of them are primarily marketers. So we wanted to be able to apply that industry expertise, industry by industry, so no matter what industry you're in, you can expand or test out different verticals. And also for small businesses as well, we just recognize that there's so many resources that have been springing up in the past 5 to 10 years, from Kickstarter, Indiegogo, that will help you get capital for your idea, to Etsy, where you can sell products that you produce on your own. But we saw this huge void that once you are, we'll call them hobbyists, people that were producing goods in their basement. Once you're looking for that next level, you're lost, right? Because now in manufacturing is very much a hush-hush industry, especially in the United States, where it's taboo for you to ask me where I got my products produced. To be able to create such a large marketplace is really where we wanted to be able to sit, because this is a way for people to be able to reach out to others and say, oh, well, just try Makers Row. They won't tell you what factory, but they'll tell you about the resource for you to find your own manufacturers. So we really want to be able to be that brand name for Made in USA and being able to create products, and we have ways to go in that. But we're really, really excited about how much progress we've made.
Definitely something to be proud of because a lot of progress has been made so far. Just in terms of, I know we probably some product designers here. I mean, how does one get started? I know one of the reasons in opening and starting Makers Row was to add the transparency, which you just kind of alluded to, that it's kind of been a hush-hush industry, but part of it was to add that transparency. So if you can either touch on the 6 stages or just in general, how does someone, like, I have a design and this sounds interesting and I want to be an entrepreneur. How do I start? What do I do?
So there was no 6 stages prior to Makers Row. You had to be able to understand how to produce a good before you even went to a manufacturing facility. And that was one of the big things that we wanted to be able to fix. Because as a watch designer, I was already developing products with all these larger companies, so I had a good grasp upon that. But when I started going into leather goods, I was pretty lost, especially producing in the United States. So rather than 6 steps, it was several weeks of stumbling along from facility to facility. And it's really interesting because even the factories won't necessarily tell you. There's some factories that will, but most factories won't tell you about other manufacturers. So you have to play this puzzle game and guess about where to really start with your idea. And so that's really one of the main things that we wanted to be able to solve for a lot of our entrepreneurs that are on our site today. Over 50% of the community that we have online are small, medium-sized businesses all the way to beginner. So we have a huge education gap that's there that we're trying to solve with our resources right now. So that's why we're going into these facilities and taking videos and showing the development process of some of our most popular products.
And also for anyone out there that is a designer and wants to start producing, there's 3 main ways to get involved. The easiest way is just to read the blog. We have seasoned entrepreneurs and brands and actual manufacturers writing and educating the community. And then the second is to create a project, and it just lays out everything that you want to create, and you can send that directly to a manufacturer. Our team also matches people directly with manufacturers. And then the third, there's a paid model where you can just search freely on your own and just connect with people directly.
Is there you mentioned that there was a paid portion, and then so is there?
Well, we're a business, so.
Of course. So what's the cost? What is the cost?
It's $35 a month currently, or $150 depending on what features you want. We wanted to make it a low enough barrier to entry for people that want to start creating their own businesses. So we made it that affordable price.
We also have some time, so if anyone has any questions as well, we will also take some questions from the audience. Just in terms of, in a few minutes, in terms of just advice, as we talk about manufacturing and product design, what advice, would you offer to, someone that wants to get into this industry, or even, folks that, like me who are professional community developers, economic developers, working in public policy, trying to, have basically our local elected officials and, individuals involved in public policy understanding that manufacturing, we're talking about diversifying our economy, this is a viable sector that can help grow. We're very tourism-based, still down here, very service-oriented. But here we're talking about creativity, innovation, people making things. We want to evolve and have more of that creative aspect in our economy here. So, what advice, either from a person looking to start or someone that's in the community development, economic development field? We heard someone talk earlier about just being plugged into the regional planning council and just being part of the conversation. How do we promote manufacturing with the advancement of technology, whether it be from the individual to professionals that are trying to encourage?
So we have several, I would say we have tens of thousands of 9-to-5ers that are looking to quit their jobs sometime soon and developing products on their own. And now they're able to do it on their off hours because now they have the access to these manufacturers to be able to develop their products. One of the things that I would discourage is holding on to your idea. A lot of people like to keep their idea secret and want factories to sign NDAs when the majority of the time it's much more beneficial for you to get out there, produce the product, get it in front of people. When I started with my watch line Steelcase, I consulted one of my professors, very well respected industrial designer, and asked him, how do I protect my idea? And he said, you don't have the time and you don't have the money. So you need to be able to conserve as much time and as much capital as you can to be able to get your idea off the ground. Just get it produced, get it in front of the right people, and the best way to protect your idea is to get it out there first. And so that's one of the major things that I would encourage a lot of entrepreneurs.
That's interesting. Get the ideal out there first, and don't worry about people stealing it. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when we were doing Brooklyn Bakery, the best thing for our business, we did like try SCORE, and me like new to entrepreneurship. I was like, oh, I'm gonna SCORE, I'm gonna get a mentor, and I did that. But really, the best advice that I got was just to just do it and just without like hesitation, just like get out there. It's kind of scary to sometimes like just put up a Shopify site like the next day and just do more faster, because you can get like a lot of advice and you can have all these resources, but then if you just keep collecting it and don't do anything about it, then it's kind of moot at that point. So I always encourage people just to get out there and just like Matthew was saying, just like do it faster and just keep trying and failing and like trying new things.
So Tanya, was that advice from the accelerator program that both of you participated? I know that was kind of you participated in an accelerator program prior to the launch of that. Did that help in terms of, as you said, encouraging people to just go forward? Where'd you get that advice?
It was a random person that I don't even know his name anymore. But it was back when I was working full time. I'm sorry. I met him like once or twice, and it was good advice. And but yeah, the accelerator helped. But I was always, before I quit to join Matthew, I was always like, oh, I want to get more experience. I want to like learn more. I want to learn more. But the time that I learned the most was when I was actually just doing it with Matthew and just like trying it. So that's.
So before I just have one question before I open it up to the audience. I'm sure everyone has some questions there. What do you see as the trends for this industry in terms of moving forward?
Sure. One of the things that we're seeing really powering this domestic manufacturing movement is the on-demand economy. Fashion is usually dictated maybe 1 year to 2 years out, and these larger brands are dictating what colors are going to be in, what sort of cut is going to be in. But now you're seeing with the rise of bloggers, like what bloggers have done to media, right, where it's such a fast turnaround time. And now you are dictating what's going to be in fashion, a lot of these fashion bloggers, what's going to be in style 1 week from now, 2 weeks from now, and you can't respond to that. As a larger company that's producing overseas, even as a smaller company that's producing overseas, you can't really respond to those sorts of trends unless you're close to your manufacturing. That's one of the things that we're seeing, and that's one of the reasons why we're partnering with a lot of these municipalities as well. We're partnering with the city of Detroit, Chicago, LA, and hopefully Miami sometime soon. So we're making our way across the country, especially based on what industries we're going into.
So you talked a lot about, not protecting your idea and just going forward with it. So how on the execution level have you been able to stay ahead of your competitors?
I think that all really depends upon who you view as your competitors. And as a watch company, I always considered Fossil my competitors, but I was able to move a lot faster than Fossil because Fossil was on this 2-year timeline where they were waiting to produce all of their products. And that's why I was invited by Nordstrom to be held in their store and in all these other department stores, because they saw that domestic can respond a lot faster. So that's who I saw as my competition. And sometimes a lot of people like to look at other small businesses that are really their competition, but I'm looking for the next level up. I'm always looking for the big guys. How can I compete with the larger level players? I always want it to be like, you know, small fish, big pond, rather than big fish and little pond.
Anyone else? Did you
I
control the
get a chance to
question?
ask my question? Okay, so how do you see Makers Row from a grassroots level? Because I see it almost like Alibaba. Alibaba transformed the entire manufacturing ecosystem in China. And everybody talks about bringing manufacturing back to the United States, but I truly believe that your program is doing that. So how do you envision your baby?
Yeah, I'm going to shake your hand afterwards. Yeah, we very much envision ourselves in many different ways as Alibaba of the West, right? Because Alibaba has basically transformed the economy in China, where they opened up the doors for small, medium-sized businesses to come, right? Initially, it was the larger companies that were going overseas and producing products. But with the rise of, you know, the internet, which we take for granted today, I feel like, but a lot of these manufacturers had their first website. And so now they find themselves accessible to small, medium-sized businesses that are in the United States. And what we see ourselves doing is opening the doors right back to the United States. And we're even seeing a lot of Chinese brands starting to produce goods here in the United States. We're even seeing domestic brands starting to produce products in which they're exporting overseas. So one of our companies, Scoff, if you go onto our site, you'll see them, and they produce basically this filter. It's like a surgical mask, but it's inside of a scarf. And it seems kind of weird at first, but like in China, that's really big, those surgical masks, and they wanted to be able to make a fashion statement with that. And now they're shipping like hundreds of thousands of these scarves, a scarf it's called, back overseas. So it's amazing to see this trend where we were exporting everything from China to the United States, and now we're seeing a lot of goods, whether it be furniture and apparel, back overseas, because Made in USA really stands for something. It stands for quality production, and that's one of the things that we're taking right back all over the world.
Because I truly see you all as like the Yellow Pages, the 4.0. It's like you're the Steve Jobs of Yellow Pages. So now the manufacturers have videos, they have these elegant pages that you can go and you can see their services, see their facilities. So it's just taking it to a whole nother level. But I'm a little giddy about it, but that concludes this session, I guess.
Yeah, and then also even kind of related to this, and then also related to the how we stay ahead of our competitors too, is that our community has benefited so much and at a faster pace even than our growth. So our factory is making millions and millions off of Makers Row, and that's, I think, like, that's also how Alibaba started out. They started out with their manufacturers creating and just making millions. And so we're just really excited that the more successful that our community is, the more successful that Makers Row is, and it all looks up.
Do you see Makers Row like purchasing buildings and having your own infrastructure? I don't know if you know about Local Motors, but Local Motors, like, and we'll talk afterwards.
You got a lot of mad people right behind you.
I'm sorry. I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I just certainly applaud you two for what you've accomplished, and it feels almost as though the proverbial curtain has been, pushed aside, and we finally get to see the wizard, because having been in the manufacturing side for a long time, trying to get products manufactured, you really don't know on where it's happening. So being able to actually see the profile of the doing business with is amazing. So kudos to you.
I think there was a lot of questions.
So I think we're just about time. I just want to thank Matthew and Tanya for joining us from Brooklyn. You're down here and sharing this amazing story of Makers Row.
It's our pleasure.
And I'm sure, and love the Made in USA brand and what you're doing, and hope to see it more in Miami, that partnership here as well. So thank you, and we can give them a round of applause.